Formatting is the last thing you'll do before submitting your dissertation. If you've reached this stage, congratulations. The University Registrar maintains Yale's official dissertation formatting guidelines. Through their page, you'll find links to the guidelines and other logistics related to submission. I've linked their resources on this page. Most guidelines will be easy to execute for users of Microsoft Word. This video covers 4 less obvious elements of formatting dissertations. First, we'll cover copying individual chapters into a single document, including making adjustments for copying chapters written in a citation manager. Next, we'll cover properly numbering the pages of different sections of the dissertation. Third, we'll look at inserting a table of contents that automatically updates if you make changes and has clickable anchor links to corresponding sections of the text. Finally, we'll look at adding and labeling figures, including adding a list of figures that automatically updates and contains clickable anchor links to the figures themselves. Each of these 3 elements requires adding some hidden formatting that helps the visible formatting work the way you want it to. Before we begin, I want to offer one note on formatting printed copies of dissertations. Yale requires you to submit the dissertation electronically, as a PDF. If you plan to order a bound copy, Yale's formatting guidelines prescribe that the pages be printed single-sided. For a bound copy, you'll need to increase the left-hand margin to 1.5 inches to leave room for binding. But because it is printed single-sided, you do not need to mirror the margins or the page numbers as you would for a double-sided copy. Let's start with the first thing most people do after they finish writing their dissertation: copying the chapters from individual documents into a single document that contains the whole project. If you haven't used a citation manager, this will be pretty straightforward. Just copy and paste the text of each chapter in the correct order in the dissertation document. If you formatted your citations using a citation manager like EndNote or Zotero, you'll need to make a decision about where you want the citations to appear. Do you want the citations at the end of the dissertation? Or do you want the citations for each chapter to appear at the end of that chapter? The Registrar's Office offers no guidelines on this issue, so the format you choose will be determined by the conventions of your discipline or the preferences of your committee. Most citation managers automatically place all citations at the end of a Microsoft Word document. This means that if you want all of your citations to appear at the end of your dissertation, they'll automatically be formatted that way as you copy and paste individual chapters. But what if you want the citations for Chapter 1 to appear at the end of Chapter 1, and the citations for Chapter 2 to appear at the end of Chapter 2? That requires some additional formatting before copying the text of the chapter into the full dissertation. These formatting changes can't be reversed, so the first thing you'll want to do before making them is to save a new copy of your chapter. Once you've saved a backup copy, you'll need to convert your citations from your citation manager's format to plain text that can be copied and pasted like any other text in Microsoft Word. If you're using EndNote, find the Convert Citations in Bibliography drop-down menu on the EndNote toolbar and select Convert to Plain Text. If you're using Zotero, unclick Unlink Citations on the Zotero toolbar. Most other citation managers have a similar setting. Converting citations to plain text unlinks them from the citation manager's format, creating text you can copy and paste into your dissertation. Now that all the text is in a single document, let's discuss numbering the pages of your dissertation. The Registrar's guidelines state, preliminary pages are numbered with lowercase Roman numerals, except the title page and copyright page, which are not numbered. The page following the copyright page will be numbered lowercase Roman numeral 3, and additional pages will be numbered sequentially. The dissertation proper begins with Arabic number 1 and runs consecutively to the end. What this means in practice is that the abstract isn't numbered. The title page and the copyright page are considered pages 1 and 2 of the preliminary material, but page numbers aren't displayed on those pages. The page number after the copyright page, the third page of the preliminary material, starts with lowercase Roman numeral 3. Those lowercase Roman numerals run through the end of the preliminary material. The table of contents, the acknowledgments, lists of figures and tables. The first page of the dissertation restarts the numbering with Arabic numeral 1, and Arabic numerals run consecutively through the end of the document. To format our page numbers in this way, we need to figure out 2 things: how to put different sequences of numbers in different sections of the document, one sequence for the preliminary material and another for the text of the dissertation, and also how to start a sequence of page numbers on a page other than 1. This will allow us to follow the Registrar's guideline that the first visible page number of the preliminary material is Roman numeral 3. To demonstrate the formatting process, I'm going to use a dummy dissertation I made. The first thing you'll want to do before formatting your dissertation is to save a fresh copy, so you have a backup in case something goes awry. To create several sequences of page numbers, we'll need to split our document into sections. Since the page numbers aren't visible on the title page and the copyright page, I'm going to place my first section break on the page after the copyright page. To insert a section break, navigate to the page where you want to put the section break and insert the cursor at the end of that page. Go to Insert, Break, Section Break, and Next Page. And then I'll need to insert one section break again for when I restart numbering with Arabic numerals at the start of the dissertation text. So again, I'll insert my cursor on the page before. I will go to Insert, Break, and Section Break, and insert it on the next page. Okay, to double check that my section breaks are there, what I'm going to do is display the header and the footer. So I'll just double click where the footer is, and it will show that Section 1 ends at the copyright page and starts on the page after the copyright page, where I'm supposed to start numbering the pages with lowercase Roman numeral 3, and the section break ends at the start of the dissertation texts, where I'm supposed to start a numbering with Arabic numerals. To insert a page number, I'm going to do one thing before I go to insert page number, which is link to previous. So linking to previous will link the page numbers in this section to the page numbers in the previous section, and I don't want that. So it will insert page numbers I don't want or show page numbers I don't want in the previous section if I don't unlink. So I will unclick link to previous, and then I will go to insert page number, and I will insert my page numbers, and then I will get a chance to format them. So the Yale Dissertation Formatting Guidelines don't actually say how the page numbers should be aligned. I'm going to align my page numbers to the center. And I am going to show the number of the first page, but I need to start my page numbers on page 3, Roman numeral 3. So to display Roman numerals, I will change the number format to Roman numerals, lowercase Roman numerals. And instead of continuing from the previous section, I'm going to start at Roman numeral 3, since that's where I'm supposed to start on the page after the copyright page. I will click OK. And I will click OK again. And there we see that on the first page of the dissertation, there are no page numbers displayed. And starting on the page after the copyright page, we see lowercase Roman numeral 3, lowercase Roman numeral 4 on the next page. But look, on the next page in section 3, where it's supposed to say page number 1, it starts with page number 5. So how do I handle that? So what I'll do is I will highlight that page number right there, and I will go up to page numbers, and I will click on Format Page Numbers. And when I format them, rather than continuing from the previous section, I will click Start and start at 1, and it will start the page numbers from that section at 1. And those numbers, as you can see, are continuous through the remainder of the document. With our page numbers in place, let's move on to creating a table of contents. Our goal is a table of contents that can be updated automatically if we add pages or if we change chapter or section titles. And we want each chapter and each section title in our table of contents to function as a link that takes you to the corresponding section of your dissertation in one click. To see how to make this happen, let's return to our dummy dissertation. So I'm going to use this blank page after the copyright page to add my table of contents. And to insert my table of contents, I'm going to put my cursor on the page where I want to add the table of contents. I will go to the References tab and click Table of Contents. And using this arrow, you can see that there are a bunch of different pre-formatted formats for table of contents here. You can also customize your own format for a table of contents. And you can also add a table of contents and then re-customize the format after it's in there. But I am just going to use the classic format for the table of contents. So I'm going to add this. And we can see we get this note, which I think is okay. We haven't added any headers, so we haven't signaled anything to Microsoft Word to populate our table of contents. But that's okay. I'm going to add the table of contents first, and I'll add the headers later. So we have a table of contents. It's in there, and it says no table of contents entries found. So let's make some entries for the table of contents. So my dissertation has chapters, and it also has sections. You can see that there's a chapter, and each chapter has sections. We see section 1, we see section 2. And what we're going to do is we'll make chapters one heading style and the sections a different heading style. So first thing we'll do is we'll go to the introduction here, and we will go to the home tab. And on these formats here, we will change the introduction to heading 1. Okay, so the introduction is heading 1. So now we see that. But one thing we see with heading 1 there is that the default for heading 1 does not look like the rest of my dissertation. It's not formatted like the rest of my dissertation. And indeed, Yale's formatting guidelines say that you should use the same dissertation font throughout. So what we can do here, rather than adjusting all of these manually, what we can do is we can change the defaults for heading 1. So what we do is we right-click on heading 1 and we go to Modify. And we see all these options down here to modify heading 1. What we want to do is we're going to change the font. The rest of the text is in Times New Roman, so we're going to do Times New Roman. We will make it 16-point font. That seems okay. We will make it bold, and right now it's kind of a dark blue color. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it black. All right, and so that will affect all of the headings that are formatted as heading 1. Okay, so we have heading 1. We have our introduction here. But let's do one more thing to heading 1 here, which is let's update the spacing here. So let's change it to double spaced. Okay, there we go. Heading 1, double spaced, bold 16-point Times New Roman. So we can go through and we see chapter 1. Oh, we see that adding that header pushed us onto the next page. So what we can do is we can add a page break here, and then we'll format the title of this chapter on the home screen as heading 1. And now we have a section of this chapter, and we will format that section not as heading 1, but as heading 2. And as you can see, there are also some pre-formatted defaults for heading number 2 that we were going to want to change. So let's go to Modify, and we will change the font to Times New Roman. We will change this, since we made our chapter titles 16-point, let's make our section titles 14-point. We will continue to bold them. We will make them black, and we will double space them. Okay, so now the section titles are also formatted, and we can go and we make this heading 2, and we have section 3. We'll make that heading 2, and then we have chapter 2. We'll make that heading 1, right? Section 1. We'll make this heading 2. We'll make this heading 2. We'll make this section heading 2. We have a new chapter title. We'll make this heading 1. And we'll make this heading 2. Okay. Now we have added all of our headers. We'll move back to our table of contents. We will see that nothing still appears in our table of contents. What we need to do for our table of contents, we'll click on it, and we get this little box up at the top with the arrow. And down here, we will go to Update Table, and there we go. It finds all of the elements that we added our headings to in our table of contents. You're not completely tied to the formatting that you're given here. So one thing you can do, for example, is you can go back through. I don't really like the italics. So one thing you could do is you could just highlight everything and take the italics away. So now we don't have any italicized things in here. We can take table of contents here. We made our chapter titles all heading 1. Let's make this heading 1 as well. So we have this table of contents formatted as heading 1. The first thing to see is that all these chapter titles, you can see from the little hand here, that these are all clickable links now. So if I click on chapter 1, section 2, it actually takes me right to chapter 1, section 2, puts the cursor right there, right? And if we go up to the top and we click chapter 3, it'll put the cursor right on the top of chapter 3. So right, all these anchor links work. One thing we could do is we might revise our dissertation a little bit, and we could change things. So maybe if we go to chapter 1 here, we could change the title of chapter 1 to Awesome Title of Chapter 1. And maybe we want to title the introduction of Chapter 1, Section 1. Maybe we want to title this Introduction. And let's make a couple more changes. So let's add a little text here. And we'll copy this and we'll add a whole chapter. And what this has done is it has pushed
everything on and added a new page here. So now some of the page numbers, all the page numbers after page 7 are going to be changed for the different sections, because this section here, chapter 2, section 3, was on page 7. Now it's on page 8, right? So we've added that. And maybe we'll do one other thing, which is we will insert a page break and we'll add a conclusion here. And what we'll do is we'll make our conclusion. Go back and make the conclusion, heading 1. All right. So again, we'll go back to our table of contents. None of the changes we've made have been updated here. So chapter 2, section 3 still appears on page 7. These parts of chapter 3 are on page 8. They're now on page 9, right? So what we can do is we can go back, table of contents, and we can update the table. And everything is updated. You'll notice one thing that happened when we updated the table is we lost the reformatting that I did. So I took away the italics and it reformatted it back to the defaults. So if you're going to make changes like that, I think you want to do them last before you redo the chapter. But you can see now chapter 2, section 3 is on page 8 instead of page 7. Our chapter titles, awesome title of chapter 1, introduction are changed, and we've added our conclusion, right? So all those things are changed. Another thing you can do is you can retype the chapter titles here. So we can retype cool section title here. And the one thing that happens is if we go back down to section 3 here, it doesn't change this way. So the changes don't go both ways, right? So if I change something in the table of contents, it doesn't change it in the text. But if I change it in the text and I update the table of contents, it will make that change. One thing that will change is if I want to revert back here, so I can go back to update. I can go to update table of contents, and I click update table. Here it gives me the option to update the page numbers only, which will not change the title, or I can update the entire table. So if I update the entire table, it's going to change this cool section title back to the original title. So you can make changes to the text up here and the formatting and just update the page numbers, and you won't lose all that formatting. But I'm going to update the entire table. And as you can see, it will revert cool section title back to what is written down in my text. Okay. I think we've finished adding our table of contents. Everything looks like we want it to. All the page numbers are correct. We know how to update them. We know how to navigate around in them by clicking on the anchor links.
Now that our table of contents is working how we want it to, let's conclude our exploration of dissertation formatting by adding and labeling some figures. In this final section, we'll cover 3 things. First, we'll talk about how to insert a figure into your dissertation. Then we'll discuss how to add captions and labels that update automatically, so they stay sequentially numbered when new figures are added. And finally, we'll discuss how to create a list of figures that functions just like our table of contents, with clickable anchor links that update automatically and take you to the figure with a single click. If you have numbered tables or equations in your dissertation, the process for labeling them and creating a formatted list works the same way it does for figures. Let's return to our dummy dissertation.
To format my figures, the first thing I'm going to need to do is to insert a figure. So we do this by adding it as a picture. Okay, so I'm going to put the cursor of my text where I want to insert my figure. So let me just put the cursor on the text there, and I will go to Insert, and Pictures. We'll insert a picture from File, and we will insert Figure 1. Okay, so now the figure is huge. Let's make this figure smaller, and then let's figure out how to format this so that it will display the way we want it to. So let's decide to have this have the text wrapped, and then let's align this to the right. So let's put it on the right, and then I can just adjust this to make this a little larger the size I want it to. And we could choose to align this in the center with no text around the sides, which I think is probably more conventional than where I'm placing this. But I'm going to place this on the right for the sake of space and align it that way. Okay. Now, the figure is inserted. It's placed where we want it in the text. The next thing we want to do is to add captions. So to add a caption, what we want to do is we want to right-click on the text and go to Insert Caption. Okay, and now we get a bunch of options here. So the first thing we want to do is we want to have this labeled Figure 1. And I'm going to go through some of these options in a second. And you can also format the numbering here as well. So we want to include the chapter number so that it numbers them automatically. So we'll click OK. And right away, we get this error message that there's no chapter number to include with the caption of the page number. And what we need to do is we'll get out of here, but without adding our figure. And what we need to do to have the figures numbered automatically is we need to have word associated numbered list with our chapter headings. And this will help us in two ways. The first thing it does is it saves us from renumbering the figures manually when we insert a new one into the middle of a chapter. And the second thing it does, it's required to auto-generate a list of figures that functions like the table of contents, the one we made with clickable links and page numbers and automatic updates. So if we want all those things, we're going to need to format our chapter headings as a numbered list. To format our chapter headings as a numbered list, what we need to do is go back to the Home tab and to these preset templates, and we'll go back to heading 1. What we'll do is we'll go back, right-click, click on Modify, and we updated all these elements with the formatting before, but now we're going to go a level deeper. We're going to click on this formatting button, and we'll go to numbering. And what we're going to do is we'll navigate over to Outline Numbered, and this sort of tiered list is what we want to do. And rather than using it the way it is, we're going to need to customize it. So what we'll do is we'll customize it. And you can enter the format for the number. I think we'll keep this the way it is, but if you wanted to, you could, for example, format it so that it added the word chapter before chapter 1. Or rather than a period after chapter 1, you could have no period, or you could have a semicolon. But we'll just keep this thing the way that it is. We will select regular numbers, and we will click OK. And then click OK. And you can see every chapter heading that was labeled heading 1 has been numbered 1 through 3. So right now we have this one numbered 3. We're going to do the same thing for our heading 2. So we will go to Modify, and we will go to Format and Numbering, and we'll click on Outline Numbering. We'll click here, and we'll click Customize, and we'll keep everything the same way that it is. We're going to level 2 here right now. So now we'll do this at level 2. So we have 1.1, or chapter number, period, section number. We'll start at 1. And one thing I'm going to do is, I don't want this indented, so I'm going to change the alignment to 0, and then this indent after the tab to what it was on level 1, which is 0.25. All right, I will click OK, and then OK. And you can see that our sections are labeled with the chapter number and the section number. So chapter number, section number, chapter number, section number. Okay, so we have these all added. So there's two things I want to change. So the first thing I think you'll see is that what we've called chapter 1 is labeled chapter 3. That seems like a hard fix, but actually it's a pretty easy fix. What you can do is you can just go back and delete the numbers from the elements on the numbered list here. So we'll delete this. We will delete this one. And now our numbered list, chapter 3, is we'll go to restart numbering, and now it's back to number 1. And then you can see it updated the section numbers in a way that that corresponds. The other thing we'll do is we'll go to our conclusion here, and we're going to delete the chapter number from the conclusion as well. Okay, and I think a lot of scientific dissertations are going to want to label their subsections 1.1, 1.2, but other dissertations won't. And for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to delete these. So what I'm going to do is I'll go back to heading 2, I'll go back to Modify, and I will go to Format, Numbering again. And rather than having this outline number, I'm just going to click None again. Click OK, OK, and heading 2 is back to having no numbered sections. Okay. After all of that pre-formatting, now I am ready to insert my captions. So back to what we did before, find the figure we want, right-click, and go to Insert Caption. And here we have a bunch of options. So the first thing we have is we can go to Format here. We want to include the chapter number. The chapter starts with heading 1, and we will use the separator period. So for example, you could make your figures, if it was chapter 1, figure 2, it's usually figure 1.1, figure 1.2, but you could put a hyphen or a colon or an em dash in between. We're going to stick with the period. Okay, so we'll stick with that, And you can also position your captions. Yale's formatting guidelines say that tables, which you can also label tables, you can create tables. These will all be labeled separately. If you can have figures, you can have tables, they'll all be labeled separately. The tables get labeled, the labels go above, and for figures, the label goes below. I know that that's common in most scientific formats. I know in APA, it asks you to put the figure number and title above the item and a note kind of describing what it is below. I'll talk about how to do that in a second. Okay, so we have caption 1.1. Most style guides suggest that you put a period after the figure number, and also I'm going to not exclude the label, so it'll say figure 1.1. Put a period after there, and then we're going to type in our caption. And okay, looks like we're all set. And now we'll click OK to insert our caption, and we see that the caption is inserted. Microsoft Word defaults to making figure captions italicized, and you can also see that it uses a different font than the rest of the document. So what we want to do is we can update the defaults for this in the exact same way we updated the defaults for the section and chapter headings. We can go to the caption format up here at the top, right click, click modify, and then we can set our defaults here. So what we want to do is we want Times New Roman. Let's make these a little bit bigger. Let's make them 10-point font. No italics, single spaced, and we will make sure they are black. And we'll click OK. And it updates it to single spaced Times New Roman font, which is exactly what we want. Now, to update it, to add our other captions, we'll just go to the next one. We have a couple other figures already inserted, so we'll caption those as well. So we insert caption, and we see figure 1.2. We will put a period after that and add our text. Okay, we can see this is labeled figure 1.2, the second figure of the chapter. And then here we have a figure in chapter 2. So let's insert this one. We'll insert our caption and period after and put that in there and okay. And again, we see now this is figure 2.1 because it is in chapter 2. Okay, first figure of chapter 2. We can see that it has the caption there. Okay, so all of our captions are inserted. Before we move on to making a list of figures behind the table of contents, what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk about two more things. I'm going to talk about reformatting this in something closer to APA format, and then I'm going to talk about if we want to move our figures around on the page and some issues related to that. So first, as I mentioned earlier, Yale's formatting conventions suggest that you put the figure numbers and captions below the figures themselves, which fits with most scientific formats. APA asks you to put the figure numbers above the figures and the figure number on a separate line than the figure title. So let's do that and see what that looks like. So first, I'm going to delete this figure caption here, and what I'll do is go back and I will insert caption. And here what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the position above the selected item. So now it's going to insert it above the selected item. And as I said, APA wants the figure number and the title of the figure on separate lines. To create separate lines in this caption, I'm going to hit Shift, which you can't see, but I'm going to hit Shift and then Enter twice. And I'm going to type the text here. So I'm going to type title of figure down below, and then I'll click OK. And so you can see that by hitting Shift and Enter, it gave me an extra space. So I have the figure number up above and the title of the figure down below. And if I want to add notes, as APA asks, below the figure, what I would do is I would insert another text box, and I would drag that text box below the figure. For the sake of this exercise, I'm going to keep the figure captions below the figure. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to undo what I did and move the figure label back to where it was. The other thing you might find yourself needing to do is to move the figure to a different place on the page. And I want to demonstrate something because it doesn't move with the caption. So If I decide I want to move my figure to the center of the page and not have any text on the sides, which is usually more conventional than putting them within the text the way I have, you will select the shape and you will go to picture format over here. And the first thing you do is in wrap text, you want to choose top and bottom. So you want the text on the top and the bottom rather than square with the sides. So select that. And note that it doesn't move to the text to the bottom of the figure caption. You have to do that separately. And for horizontal alignment, I want to align center. So I'll move it to the center. And just note that the figure caption has not been reformatted with the figure. So you have to format that separately. So select the figure caption, go back up to shape format, since this is a text box. And then you want to go to arrange here. So for wrap text, select the same thing you selected for the figure, top and bottom. And you can see it moves the text to the bottom. And for the alignment, you change the horizontal alignment to the center, and now it's centered beneath the figure. I think that covers all the things I can think of around inserting figures and moving them around and captioning them and placing the captions. So the last thing we're going to do is we are going to insert a list of figures. So we have our table of contents on this page. The next thing we're going to do is insert a figures list. So we're going to put it on the top of this blank page. And what we'll do is we'll go back to the references tab and click insert table of figures. So here we go, insert the table of figures. And again, it gives you all kinds of different templates here. You can select all these things. So we wanted to say figures. You can choose all these different formats here. I'm just going to go from the sort of standard format. You can choose different formats if you want. We want hyperlinks. We won't modify anything, but you can modify various elements of it if you want to play around here. Okay, so we've got the table of figures. We're going to click OK. It inserts the table of figures. Okay, so we'll notice a few things on the table of figures here. So the first is it doesn't say table of figures on the top. And the second thing we'll notice is that it includes the entire caption of each figure. So what you can do is edit these by selecting the text. So we'll select this text here. And that figure was sort of like a cycle of action. So we'll call that figure an action cycle. And we'll edit the next one, right? So we'll select the text. And that was sort of a flow chart of different categories. So we'll call it category flow chart. And then for the last one, select the text. And that was a bar graph. So we'll just call that bar graph. So we have our figures labeled. One thing we might want to do is we probably want to add a name at the top. So we will call this list of figures. And I wish these were spaced out a little more. So one thing I can do is you can go up here and home and you can change the spacing. So let's just make these 1.5 space and let's make them bold here as well so we can see them. Okay. And we'll note just at the table of contents, if you click on these, it takes you right to the caption of the list of figures. So it puts the cursor in the caption. And again, if we go up and click on the bar graph, it'll take us down to the bar graph and put the cursor right in the caption. The last thing I want to do, I want this to show up in my table of contents. So what I'm going to need to do is go over here and I want to make this heading 1. And as you can see, it defaults to numbering those headings. So again, I want to go back to deleting that number, and then let's just go make sure. So restarted the numbering for that one at 1, and it looks good. So to get that to show up in the table of contents, I go back to the table of contents, and I go back, click Update Table, and I want to update the entire table, not pages numbers only, and okay. And you can see the list of figures is up there on page lowercase Roman numeral 4.
Yale requires you to submit your dissertation as a PDF. With our page numbers, table of contents, and figures list now in place, I think we're ready to convert our Word document into a PDF.
And as you may know, to do that, you go to Save Copy, and you choose PDF as your file format. Since we are going to submit this electronically, we will choose Best for Electronic Distribution. We will click Export, and then we will open our PDF. And what we're going to do before we are finished is just test the anchor links in our table of contents. So we'll click on the title of Chapter 3, and it takes us to Chapter 3 in the document. Now let's just test our figures list here. So if we go in the figures list and we click on figure 1.2, it takes us right to the caption of figure 1.2 in the document.
And we're done. You're done. All that's left is to upload the PDF to Yale's degree petition and dissertation submission portal and have a party, or if you prefer, a nap.